Hi, this is my review of Rogue Stars, skirmish wargaming in a science fiction underworld. This game was designed by Andreas Filigoy, and he is quite famous for his game of Song of Blades and Heroes. That's a line of rules-light wargames, different variations of it. So it was quite interesting to see that Rogue Stars is actually quite a deep strategic and tactical experience. Now let's talk about the quality of the physical book. You can get this as a PDF as well, but the physical book is worth getting in my opinion. I'm going to put the links in the description below so you can check out where you can get it as a physical book or as a PDF. The physical book itself is quite sturdy. It's probably one of the best, if not the best, in terms of quality when it comes to softcover books in my collection. The softcover is really glossy, very nice to look at and to hold. Everything is well put together. You have this high quality glue keeping the pages in their place, and you have this white thread going across the spine of the book. On the inside you don't see it on the cover, so this book is going to last you for a long time. Right now I am flipping through it as roughly as I can, and it just holds well together, so very well. And you get many illustrations of the characters that you can create in this game. You also have a lot of photographs, because there is an official line of miniatures for this game produced by North Star Military Figures, so you might want to check those out. And everything is well organized and explained. Now let me talk about some criticisms when it comes to the quality. This book has some errors. You need to download the errata clarifications and frequently asked questions sheet. I'm going to put the link so you can get that sheet and other additional material. You also have some rosters and some quick reference sheet. So, but despite that, the book overall is great. I never had like some really difficult to answer question about how the game is played or how a battle proceeds. But you definitely want to check out the frequently asked questions sheet, because they also include details on how to play this game with more than 2 players. Because this game, at first it looks like a game that should only be played between 2 people, but you can actually play with 3 or 4 probably. So you definitely want to check that out. And the errata mainly concerns the values of ranged combat modifiers, some details on traits, improvised weapons, etc. Now, let's talk about the contents. The theme or the story of this game is non-existent. However, because of the illustrations and some additional background information that you can find in the pre-generated characters and squads that appear at the end of the book, you kind of get a feeling that this is a space opera type of game. A fringe type of environment, an underworld where you can link together scenarios to have different missions and basically tie up together the entire chain of events so that you can build a proper sci-fi story. The book starts with an introduction to the basics, telling you what you need. You will need about 4 to 6 figures per player, because this is a squad based game, but not in the sense that you control several squads, rather you control a single squad. Things get quite personal. You also need a surface, a 3x3 surface will suffice, and you also need enough scenery. You need about between 6 to 10 pieces of scenery to fill around 2/3 of the table, of the battlefield. You also need 3 20-sided dice and some markers to keep track of stress, pin, and wound counters. It's advisable that you do not place these counters on the battlefield, because some players like to keep counters and tokens next to the miniatures, but it's better to keep them on the character roster. Otherwise, things get too cluttered. Although, if you're like me and you like to have some counters or tokens representing some things, if you have perhaps like a mini explosion type of counters and such, I would recommend using those to represent pin counters on the battlefield. Perhaps using a large one to represent, let's say, 2 or more pin counters. And of course you need your measuring tape and perhaps a few more markers, or just pen and paper to write down some conditions and other effects that happen during battle. The main way to play the game, to solve all the different checks and carry out different rolls, you need to roll a 20-sided die and get a certain number or above that. This is a target number. So if the target number is, let's say, 10, you need to roll 10 or above. And depending on the situation, there will be modifiers, things that will give a bonus or apply a penalty to your roll. And this has to do with activating your miniatures, carrying out reactions, taking the initiative, and such. And there are critical failures and critical successes. For example, in a critical failure, your character could suffer a setback. And when you score a critical success, perhaps in combat you deal more damage. Pretty self-explanatory. However, there is an optional rule to increase critical failure and success, and I like this optional rule quite a bit. It's basically if you beat a target number by 10 or more, or if you fail that number by 10 or more, you score as a failure or a success respectively. And this makes each encounter quite dramatic and gritty. After getting some general definitions, they tell you about the game sequence. Before starting out anything, you carry out an intelligence check. This is a tech roll. You try to roll 15 or above that, and this is to find out the profiles of your opponent, the squad profile. This could give you some advantages because this lets you know that many times the opponent is going to choose different equipment, weapons, armor, and traits in secret, so that you do not know exactly what you are going to face in the next mission. So this intelligence roll will give you some strategic advantage as you start to plan out how to move your miniatures after you know that your opponent has a certain weapon or some equipment that allows him to teleport around the battlefield, etc. And then you carry out the initiative roll, rolling a 20-sided die and adding some modifiers depending on the squad and the miniatures that you are using. Once initiative is determined, the game it's actually really interesting in its sequence because it doesn't feel like a succession of turns, rather it feels like a giant turn and you're constantly stealing the initiative from your opponent. So once a player has the initiative, he will start activating his miniatures. To activate a figure, you need to roll 8 or above that on a 20-sided die. You can roll up to 3 of such dice because some actions are somewhat complex and you need perhaps 2 or 3 actions that you need to commit to them to carry them out. And you could say, well, this is going to be endless, that the opponent is going to be rolling his dice and he's going to be surpassing that number, and when is my turn going to come up? But it doesn't work that way. Each time your opponent activates a character, that character, depending on the number of actions, is going to suffer stress. You put a stress marker on a character according to the number of actions that a character takes. If that character carries out 2 actions, he's going to suffer 2 stress tokens or markers. And each of these stress markers will add a -1 to the roll. So it's going to be increasingly difficult to activate that figure. This keeps the opponent from activating the same figure over and over again. That is, you can do it, but there is a risk that you will fail your roll. And if you fail your activation roll, then the opponent gets to react with the number of dice that you failed to in your roll. Because, for example, maybe you rolled 3 20-sided dice, and of those you failed with 2, and those couple of dice can be used by the opponent to carry out some sort of action, perhaps moving, attacking, activating something, but the opponent may also choose to try to steal the initiative from you by using one of those dice. It's somewhat difficult, as you need to roll 16 or above that. And there are also other factors related to stress, pin counters, wound markers, but the point is that eventually it's going to be too difficult for you to keep the initiative, and the initiative will pass to your opponent, whether you like it or not. Although, for example, if you have reached a certain point where you feel like your figures or your characters are too stressed out, then it could be an advantage to give the initiative to your opponent as you stay behind some buildings, because when you give the initiative up, all of your stress markers are gone, so they will not affect you negatively during different checks. The different types of actions that you can carry out are melee attacks, crawling, sneaking and hiding, walking, running, sprinting, reloading, standing up. All of those are significantly detailed, but they aren't cumbersome. Probably in about 2 or 3 games you will understand how to carry out those actions perfectly without having to look for them in the rules manual. Something that I really like of this game is that it feels a lot like a competitive RPG experience. This is, to me, this is not just a skirmish game. The way that you build this narrative and how each character develops significantly in traits and the gear that you purchase for that character, the campaign flavor is very strong, and you're going to care a lot about each of your squad members to the point that it will really hurt when they actually get killed. So you can carry out different types of checks, some more unorthodox than others, because in this game you actually have jump packs and flight packs and teleportation gear, so that you can teleport around the battlefield with all of those, the risks that you will expect that you may accidentally teleport inside a solid object and such. You can also use Psionic Abilities. Again, it's a simple roll, a 20-sided die, trying to roll a 10 or above, but there are also modifiers. You can also aim, shoot, pick up objects, and such. It's also important to note that in this game, it's quite difficult to die. If you get attacked enough, your character will end up out of action, that is like knocked out. But you don't die immediately unless you get shot on the head. But if a friendly character uses first aid, you may actually get rescued. And depending on who wins the scenario, there is also the possibility of death. Because, for example, if many of your figures ended up out of action, but you won the scenario, they automatically survive, but otherwise they will die. But so you must take into consideration when it's possible to heal them, when it's possible to carry them to safety outside of the battlefield, and you even have to make a check to see if they survive. So you have to keep all of that in mind. And there's also a chance, for example, if you're fighting like certain squads, like the Star Cops, because they take prisoners, they usually capture those characters that are out of action. And so then you should play a rescue mission in the next mission that you play in the campaign. When it comes to ranged combat, you can carry out all sorts of variations within it. That is, you can call shots if you want to attack a certain part of your enemy's a limb or the head of the enemy or some sort of equipment. You can do that. And all of those modifiers related to, for example, if you're shooting with your offhand, they come into play, because as you take damage, one of your limbs may end up crippled or completely severed. So suddenly you don't have your left arm anymore and you have to use your right arm. Although it is possible to replace those missing limbs by paying the amount of experience points needed by cloning that limb or by using some sort of like a cybernetic replacement. So it's all very interesting. Damage is surprisingly gritty considering the over-the-top space opera theme of the game. Melee combat works just like ranged combat. You roll a 20-sided die, try to roll above 10 or above, and you see the results. Because in this game there aren't more traditional stats. When you manage to hit your opponent, you see where the hit was applied. There is a hit location table, and depending on your successes, maybe you hit your enemy on the torso. But if you succeed the roll by more than needed, perhaps 8 or more, you could hit your opponent's head, or perhaps an arm or a leg. And then you see the damage results. The opponent is going to make a roll and add some modifiers. Some of them have to do with his armor, the armor value of that particular part of his body where he was hit. But you also add other things such as traits. And depending on the result, maybe you got lucky and you only get like a pin counter or marker. That means that when you are pinned down, so to speak, you are less effective at carrying out shooting attacks and are easier to hit in melee because maybe your character is like shell-shocked and such. But if you get a really bad result, you could end up with a pin marker and a wound marker and receiving critical damage. Maybe you drop your weapon. Maybe that attack grazed or crippled your leg. And as I was telling you, if you get really unlucky, you could end up getting your head hurt and you have to pass a check or you die. So this is a game where you really need to stick to cover and trying to hide between different pieces of terrain and scenery. And you have all the tables for weapons and armor. There are different weapon abilities such as armor piercing, electrical weapons. There are also weapons that entangle your opponent. There are also some scorching weapons, weapons that stun your opponent. And you also have different types of armor with properties of camouflage, force field, armor that is melee optimized, and some armor that is sealed, so it's going to give you protection against gas and atmospheric effects. There's also details on morale rolls, because every time one of your squad members goes out of action, because all of your squad is supposed to be connected through perhaps augmented reality or radio or telepathic contact, everybody experiences that shock or is aware of that, and you have to pass a check so that you do not panic or you start routing, because when you rout, one of your characters, perhaps the one with the highest leadership value, needs to make a check to see if he can return you to the battlefield to help you keep yourself together. Each mission is randomly determined. You roll a 20-sided die and you check a table. So some missions could be bodyguard work, some could be related to smuggling, some could be related to abduction or destroying property, having a duel, interrogation, making it to the ship alive, and the details are quite extensive and meaty, so each mission is going to feel quite different from the other. But that's not all. You also have details on, for example, the location where that mission is going to happen. So a mission that has to do with securing the area is going to feel quite different when you play it inside a scientific facility when compared to playing it on dense terrain, open battlefield, or a nice planet. And as you can imagine, all of those different environments has their own unique factors that play into the battle. And some places will be quite slippery, some others could be quite deadly. You also roll for complications. Maybe you are low on ammo. Maybe there are explosives set up. Maybe there's a rookie on the side of your force. Maybe there's a space demon on the loose. And all of that changes each mission, so you never feel like you're playing the same mission over and over again. It's quite the opposite. You always feel like you're playing something different. And related to this, to the environment and the mission, you also need to roll for terrain. Maybe there's dangerous terrain, maybe you need to climb, maybe you risk falling down, maybe there are acidic pools, or there's too much oxygen, maybe you get dizzy, maybe there are weather changes, maybe it's too cold and it's quite difficult to climb, or maybe there's rain and it's quite difficult to shoot at your opponent, not enough visibility. Perhaps there's also effects related to gravity, but perhaps my favorite, let's say, mission detail or modification is anything that has to do with space wrecks, that is going inside those fallen hulks, that's giant spacecraft that you go inside and that you explore different rooms and corridors. You will have to roll to see if there are strange encounters within. Maybe you find hostile life forms, or maybe you get lucky and you find some weapons and gear that you can use. And if you start shooting inside of a ship, whether that ship is fallen, or maybe it's during a space battle and you're fighting inside of it, maybe trying to board that ship, there is collateral damage. If you start shooting all of your weapons inside the ship, maybe you will damage some sort of the circuitry or the engines, or there's a ricochet, and there will be some terrifying consequences, but it's an important tactical consideration if you're losing the mission. Maybe you simply have no way of winning a particular mission, and maybe you try to shoot at your opponent nonetheless to see if you damage some part of the ship, and maybe the ship starts to explode and you need to get out of there, and all of the characters need to make some checks to see if they manage to get to their escape pods or they manage to teleport out of the ship, otherwise they die. So that would be like a good way to get even upon a superior opponent. You also have details on containers of what types of items you may find during a mission. Some of them you may keep at the end of the mission if you pay the experience points that they cost. When it comes to NPCs, I would recommend that you design a few of them before playing the game, because as I was telling you, in some encounters, some neutral NPCs could appear or come out, and they attack everyone depending on the situation. So they're like this third, or depending on the number of players, this other force that is attacking everyone and represents an important obstacle. When you create your squad, you follow certain themes. Maybe you want to create a squad of bounty hunters, or cultists, or cyborgs, or mercenaries, or miners, or pirates, etc. There's almost any theme in sci-fi imaginable. And each squad feels quite different, quite particular when compared to the other squads. Because, for example, a bounty hunter squad is going to feel quite skilled, but not as well equipped in terms of weapon and gear when compared to cyborgs. And a cultist squad is going to feel quite different in their use of psionic powers, because maybe they worship some sort of eldritch outer space entity, or maybe Cthulhu. You can come up with anything that you like. They're going to feel quite different when compared to, for example, merchants that are very well equipped in terms of general equipment, for example, flag packs and jump packs and such, but not very good at handling different types of weapons, at least at the start of the game. Because as you play the campaign, you can spend your experience points to get all sorts of gear and traits. And in this case, the cultists would outmatch the merchants on the psionic aspect, perhaps. But it also depends, because the merchants also have quite a bit of psionic potential. But the cultists, they basically make it a must-have to have a team of all full psionics. And they're also good guys on the psionic side. You have a complete psionics team that they feel a bit like... You could basically create like a Jedi Knight if you wanted to. You also have details on tactical disciplines. You choose one to further specialize your squad. Because, for example, maybe your squad has a lot of brawlers and you have 10 melee tokens, and anytime you may spend one of these tokens to reroll a failed melee attack. Or maybe your squad has the ability of Masters of the Quantum Leap. So the squad may reroll each failed Quantum Leap roll. Or maybe your squad has the Blitzkrieg. So this squad has a bonus to initiative roll at the beginning of the game. and such. So there are many different tactical disciplines that will further customize your squad. You also have the information to design characters by choosing different traits, gear, weapons, armor. You can create robots, you can create sort of like reptilian aliens, you can create some that are more on the insectoid side of things. You can also create plant-like anthropomorphic aliens. They could have claws. They could be just humans as well. You could also have like extra legs, extra arms, miscellaneous equipment, weapon upgrades, psionic abilities, cybernetic enhancements, and all of that can be customized by paying the amount, a certain amount of experience points. So it's quite fun to develop your team as you go through the campaign. You also have a handy character design summary. And at the end of the book, as I was telling you, you have sample characters and squads, so you can begin playing right away if you don't want to create your own team. And they'll have like a bit of background story and profile information, so that gives you a bit of a sense of the game world to create your own space mythology. And then we have the campaign rules, and this section, even though it's sufficient enough, I think a couple more paragraphs could have been handy in helping you give good structure to your campaign, because someone who's already been playing some war games and skirmish games is going to have no trouble at all understanding the campaign rules, but perhaps a new player is going to spend some time figuring out how he's going to put things together. So here you have details on who survives after a battle, and that I was telling you that some characters get knocked out or out of action, and some may survive depending on what you do with your fallen comrades. They tell you how to distribute earned experience points, how to add traits, how to handle wounds, crippled limbs, prosthetics, adding and replacing equipment, etc. So overall, what do I think of Rogue Stars? I think this game is quite different from other sci-fi skirmish games because it has a very strong feel of playing a competitive role-playing game. Each one of your characters is going to feel like a unique being, a unique entity with all of these traits and gear, and you really care about that character. You want to keep him safe as long as possible. If you see that the mission is going to fail, you may decide to bail out and get out of there as soon as possible and rescue your fallen comrades. Otherwise, you're going to lose that character that you have spent so much time developing, spending experience points. I think this is a very deep strategic and tactical game. If you're looking for a beer and pretzels type of skirmish game, this is not it. This is a very involved type of game. If you're one of those players that is constantly thinking, oh, but when I carried out that attack, you were already too tired, or don't tell me that you were actually able to score that shot with all of those wounds, or I'm pinning you down, attacking you with these 3 characters, how come you don't take any penalties for that? If you're that sort of player, you're going to love this game because it takes into consideration almost any factor on the battlefield, any sort of variability that develops itself in the course of the battle. And there's a lot of replay value to this. There is a lot of replayability as you generate different missions, different locations, different environmental conditions. All of that creates a unique story with each match or with each campaign. So it's quite fun to create this linked set of missions that tell a story little by little. There are also some paragraphs explaining how to give some sense of narrative to the different missions. Perhaps you want to play a somewhat short campaign, seeing who wins 2 out of 3 missions. Or maybe you want to play something a bit longer, perhaps around 4 or 6 missions, when you develop your characters and prepare for this final mission, perhaps mission number 6, where that's the mission that counts. So you can create any campaign that you can think of. So I highly recommend that you get Rogue Stars, and the physical book, as I was telling you, it's quite impressive, even though you will have to print the errata or read it from your computer screen. It's going to be really nice to to own the physical book, but if you prefer PDF, it's also available as a PDF, remember? So Rogue Stars, skirmish wargaming in a science fiction underworld. Definitely get this if you want a deep, tactical, and strategic skirmish sci-fi game. More on the space opera side of things. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.